Hello everyone. Today I am going to be talking to you about the coherence principle. I chose a slide from SlideShare that focuses on animals and their habitats. This week in kindergarten I've been teaching the same standard. I've been talking about animals and how they survive in their environments. In this slide in particular, you are looking at what is supposed to be a quiz. And if I were to use this in my kindergarten classroom, this immediately reminds me of coherence principle number 3. Avoid using e-lessons with extraneous words. You can notice how there are different color words, there is all kinds of text, and you can even notice how there are two completely different pictures that really do not relate to one another. I can tell that in my classroom, my friends would first be looking at Captain Answer here and becoming completely distracted from the actual content. You'll also notice that there are actually more than one question on this slide. You'll see the first one, is it a wild or domestic animal? And then what I thought was interesting is that actually the answers are on the same slide. So if I were to try to use a slide like this in my classroom, I created one that might be a bit more effective. So what I did was I decided to put up at the top, what do you know about sharks? This is getting them to start thinking and reflecting about what they do know about this animal. And I decided to put one question on the slide. Is it a wild or domestic animal? I decided to underline wild and domestic. We could have also bolded these words as well, just so the students are thinking about the vocabulary of what is wild and what is domestic. I decided to put one question on the slide, and then immediately following the slide, I decided to put the answer, and we put it is a wild animal. I like this idea better because the answer isn't right in front of them as soon as you give the question. You give the question, you give the students time to discuss and reflect, and then come up with their answer, and then you can move to the next slide to see if they are correct. I like this format a little better because I believe that this is not as distracting as the previous example. This has a little bit of text with a picture that directly correlates with the information that we are talking about. In regards to speaking of omitting extraneous words, I come to this next example. This is an example from the same slide, and when I read it, it says what a grassland is. What animals live in the grasslands? I found this slide in particular to be a little bit confusing, only because I feel as though they omitted too much. I feel as though they should have perhaps talked about the grassland first and then what animals live in the grassland. So to show an example of how I would have changed this to more align with the coherence principles, I would have gone to this type of slide. At the top it says, what is a grassland? And I have given a very quick definition of the grassland. It says a large open area of country covered with grass, especially one used for grazing. And I also create a picture where you can certainly see the grasslands and that animals are grazing on this grass. I found this type of slide to be a little more effective, especially with kindergartners. If you're asking too many questions at once, a student may get distracted by one question or the other and may not have time to fully reflect and comprehend each of those questions. Going back to the same example, I also thought that the questioning was interesting. Instead of saying what is a grassland, they chose to say what a grassland is. And for kindergartners, it's really important that we choose our words wisely, so that way we are making sure that we are getting our ideas out there clearly so that there are no misconceptions to what they are learning or what we are trying to say. So in regards to the coherence principle, the fact that the questioning is just a little difficult to understand, Also considering that there are two questions on the same slide that do not, if you even go to the next slide, it goes into something completely different. So in regards to the coherence principle, we want to make sure that the visuals that we are using and the questions that we are asking, we want to make sure that they are all blending in smoothly and transitioning so that students do not get distracted and do not have any misconceptions. So going back to this slide, when I think of the coherence principle and thinking about the idea of omitting extraneous words, we also want to make sure that we are enforcing the key ideas. And so here I would want to make sure that I'm still bringing in those key ideas that I want my students to learn.